Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who has been blocked. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not professionals. We are not trained in any of this. So please take our advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding, but mostly confusing experience that is love. All right, it is the beginning of the week, so we're going to start this episode out with a check-in topic before we dive into the letter. The check-in topic today is inspired by a conversation that my wife and I had about a family friend of theirs. Without specifics, basically she was expressing that there's this older couple in her life, in her family, not by blood, that, they've been a staple in her life since she was a child. She's really close with them and their children. And she was expressing how at one point in an intimate conversation, one of the people in the marriage basically told my wife that, it hasn't always been easy in their marriage. They're in their 70s. They've got kids that are grown, grandkids, and sort of expressed that it hasn't always been easy, and that there was a period in their relationship, in their marriage, in which they, weren't connected, were more like roommates, were doing their own things. And she didn't know if their marriage was going to last. She just had a level of uncertainty. And when my wife was sharing this with me, she was expressing how this was like a pivotal shift in her perspective of this relationship and also relationships in the world, because, we're sold so many fallacies about romantic relationships and love and longstanding love. And she had just assumed that they were like this very happy couple. This isn't to say that they're not a healthy partnership. They have a really beautiful life together and many years of happiness, but it was almost like humbling to my wife to hear about to hear the transparency, to glimpse behind the curtain, the mask of this relationship, to see that there are two real people behind it. And this sparked a conversation between her and I about, how, to zoom out for a second, I feel like weddings, I fucking love weddings.
I love them.
I love that they're romantic. I cry at every wedding, even though I don't know even if I don't know who's in it, Oh
my God, same. Yes, just like tears in the
really
eyes.
Do.
And I'm like, this is like Peter's cousin. Who I've met once. Yeah. Why am I weeping?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So I love those proclamations of love. And at the same time, the wedding culture and the way we talk about partnerships and romance, it's almost like we sell ourselves short or we set ourselves up poorly, because we have this huge romantic day if you choose to get married. We use words like forever and soulmates and till death do us fucking part. And I feel like, well, don't get me wrong, I cry. It doesn't set us up for the ebbs and flows in even the healthiest relationships. Even the healthiest relationships, there are periods of connectedness and there are periods of uncertainty, and there are periods of healing and unhealthiness, and there are periods of great communication, great connection and growth together. And not only that the purpose of our partner changes over time in our lives. And I feel like the bill of goods that a wedding sells us is, this is your person, this is your soul connected thing in your life, and it's going to be romantic forever. And in reality, I even see the shift in my partnership now that my wife and I have a child. all of a sudden we go from being really romantic partners to like project managers, and we have to really put effort into prioritizing our romance. And just wanted to bring that to the JVU table and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, at least in my experience, there's like a generational change. Like there are so many times when like folks who are older than me have talked about like, sometimes you just got to get your head down, like put your head down and like get to the next thing, because like marriages and relationships aren't always going to be great, but like it's worth it to stay in it. And I think that there's been a lot of like good shift in that, right? Like, because I think that people stayed in a lot of unhealthy things because like divorce or whatever didn't feel like an option
to make it stay together for the kids or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that is, I think that there's a lot of unhealthiness in that, but I also appreciate the idea that like, of course, relationships are going to have ebbs and flows. And if we immediately get out of relationships anytime that something ebbs, then like we're going to be set up to be going from relationship to relationship, because every relationship is going to have times of, we're just project managing because we just had a kid, or it might be that like, somebody's going through a mental health. Yeah, absolutely. Or, there may be a period where somebody's like really struggling financially, and like we got to kind of like batten down the hatches and like figure out how we're going to make this work.
You can't
right?
have
like,
an expensive date.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is, like that idea that I think is part of old marriage vows. That's like for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, through sickness and in health, right? Where that kind of mentality I think can be helpful. And of course you can go to an extreme where it's like you're staying with somebody even though you're like deeply unhappy and like there hasn't been. So it's curious because obviously every relationship is different, but I do think that there's like a sort of an appropriate middle that we need to find for ourselves around like, how do we stick with something even though it may be crunchy or challenging, while also being like, how do I recognize when something isn't working and isn't worth the work anymore? And I think for folks who are in older generations, it was easier because it's like, never leave. And for like our generation and others, it's like, well, what is it? How do we find this like medium between these two different extremes? Yeah, absolutely. Which we can talk about settling if we want to talk about that too, because I will have opinions about that.
I also think, and this conversation is obviously excluding instances of emotional and physical abuse or just true incompatibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also, with that being said, I'm also really interested in acknowledging that there are times in our life when the health of our relationship, or more importantly, I should say like the romance or the connectedness of our relationship, is just not the priority, like Sam said. And I think we see that a lot in longer lasting partnerships where in the beginning, it feels like it's the beginning and ending of everything, it's this romantic connection. And then like, after 20 years of that, you're like, I want to go play pickleball with my girlfriends, or whatever.
That's real. I do want to play pickleball with my girlfriends. That sounds great. Now.
I guess I'm not just trying to paint like a senior citizen picture here, even though it is like the fastest growing sport in America, predominantly played by 55 and up communities.
It's also so much fun. I love it.
So much fun. Remember pickleball was like one of my blind dates once?
I do.
I go to Florida once and I come home and I'm like, pickleball. Well, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think I appreciate the story because it offers a reminder that relationships do have ebbs and flows, and that like even relationships that we might look at as being like really healthy and wonderful have times when it doesn't quite work in the way that we want to. And it's a good reminder for us to like not idealize other people's relationships, right? Like how many celebrity couples have we been devastated by when they broke up? And it's because like we don't actually know anything about what's going on for them. And like we never will because we're not in that relationship. So
yeah, totally.
Profound story from Willow. So tell her thank you for sharing that with us. I don't know if she consented or if you're just doing this.
Willy-nilly. That's what I call her.
Great. Love
All right, here we go. Let's get into today's letter. It is from Z, just Z, whose pronouns are she, her, who's writing to us from the blocked zone. Hi, Sierra, Sam, Spencer, and all the lovely family. Thank you so much for all of the head and heart work you have taught me to do. I've been listening since 2019, and I'm so grateful that I have your lovely voices in my head every week. I'm writing to you because I have been blocked. For context, I, 25 female, have been dating my partner, 26, any pronouns, X, for a year and a half now. We met while working at the same place, a summer contract where we both love and have returned to several summers in a row. We are in a long-distance, non-monogamous relationship, and they are poly. They have been dating their fiancé, not going to get married, but they liked the gesture, 25, non-binary T, for 6 years. Since I am the new girlfriend, I took a lot of time to make sure that T was comfortable with me dating X as to not overstep any boundaries. It went really well the first year. T started a group chat with the three of us on Snapchat, Facebook Messenger, and would even DM me on Insta. We were spending birthdays together, Thanksgiving, New Year's, all having sleepovers since we are long distance. I thought everything was progressing well, and they were comfortable with having me around and having a shared person. That is until about a year in, I found out that T is bothered by how my and X's relationship started and doesn't like that our anniversary is the day we first hooked up. That is not the reason that the date is our anniversary. We had a very lovely date and awkward flirting because I'm a baby gay and can't tell when people have crushes on me. Not to mention, X is demisexual and was very much interested before we started going on little dates. Because of T's discomfort, X asked if we could change our anniversary date to a different day. This made me feel like I was being slut-shamed by my Metamour. I said it was okay, and now we just don't celebrate any anniversary because it now makes me uncomfortable. Fast forward to only a few weeks past our, quote, anniversary date, and I get a notification from Facebook that T has left our group chat, followed by removing me as a friend on Facebook, unfollowing and blocking me on Instagram, and removing me from Snapchat. It felt really out of the blue for me and hurt and shocked me. I asked X about it and asked if I did anything wrong. And they said something along the lines of, no, they just do this sometimes. It happens to everyone. This really bugged me. It has been 6 months since that incident and no one has brought it up. X says that T struggles with their mental health and knows that this is a contributing factor to blocking me, but that makes me feel like I am not allowed to confront T about it because if I do, then I am harming their mental health. I guess my question is, what do I do? How do I move past this block when it was someone who is my Metamour? I wish I could go to X about this, but if I do, I feel like I will sound like I am nagging them to force T to add me back to get me to stop complaining. Any advice you may have would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, Z.
All right, Z, thank you so much for writing to us, for asking us this question. We talk about the block on this podcast a lot because it can be a really helpful and effective tool to help us, put distance between us and somebody whose, constant presence in our lives isn't helping us heal. And we have often also talked about what it feels like to be the one who is blocked in this situation.
Yeah, awful.
Yeah, it's really not great. It doesn't feel good in lots of different ways. And I appreciate that you are really trying to think about how to navigate this in a way that is understanding of what T is going through with their mental health. Also understanding that, X is in a space kind of between you two. But also, I think it's really reasonable for you to be like, this doesn't feel like a super tenable option, given that we are Metamours and are going to need to be in continued relationship with each other, given the fact that we are both with X at this point. So it's a complicated situation and it's a shitty one. And I'm sorry that you're in this pickle. Sierra and I are going to offer you some comfort and some advice. But first, we're going to take a short break.
All right, my darling, thank you so much for writing and trusting us with this letter. I agree with Sam. This really challenges our ego to be blocked, and especially if you're somebody who has anxiety around, people pleasing or disappointing people, I would just turn the house upside down if I felt like somebody that I was in an active relationship with, meaning like somebody who was actively in my life in one way or another chose to like not have access to me or like block me out in that way. It's very challenging. Sam and I believe in the black. I believe in the black. And I'm going to offer you like a perspective on maybe like a more palatable perspective on why T needed to block you. But that doesn't mean it doesn't like hurt. It doesn't mean it isn't difficult to process through. And this is extra complicated because, like I said, you are still in their life, whether peripherally or not, full disclosure, I have never been in a polycule or had another Metamour to negotiate with. So I'm not sure if there are, rules of engagement within that community that would disagree with what I'm about to say. And I encourage you to seek those resources out. But I imagine that it must be really complicated to be connected to X who is connected to T who doesn't want to speak with you. I want to say first a reason why I think, or like a possible reframing that will help you move through the fact that T blocked you. I don't know T. I don't know anything about them outside of the small details that you shared. I don't know what their mental health is like, but I know that when I have blocked people in the past or muted their stories or, turned them on silent on my phone or whatever, when I have put road bumps between me and being triggered by them or angered by them or whatever it is, it has been truly because I want to be a better person. It is often not because I just like hate that person or despise them or whatever. It is because I have in the past, I have blocked or muted people because the feelings that come up when I see them passively or whatever really trigger my most unhealed self is the way I think about it.
Yeah.
And then I'm having feelings of jealousy and anger and judgment. I'm all my wounds are screaming out like, oh, well, they're, let me judge them to reveal that unhealed part of me, and I have blocked people or muted them because I wanted to put distance between that sort of unhealthy, not emotionally mature reaction that I'm having. I wanted to put some space between that and my more emotionally mature responses. I don't know what T is doing and what tools they're using and what triggers they have, and I don't know what's going on there. But a way that I would look at this is maybe they are being challenged in their relationship. They're feeling insecure. They're feeling jealous. And they need to put some space between those feelings and their everyday life so that their best, most emotionally mature self can show up. That is the way that I would interpret this, knowing literally nothing about their everyday life. How about that?
I love that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think Sierra is right that like, it sounds like T is really trying to like figure out what's going on with them and how they can like be in this relationship with X while X is also with you. And like, I have a lot of compassion for the idea that might be challenging for somebody who, may or may not be like super practiced in what it needs to be in a poly relationship with someone. And, there's lots of different ways that poly relationships can show up, right? It can be that you and T don't talk at all. And that's like a possibility. I think the issue for me here is that like it seems like you are all kind of operating under one set of sort of understanding of what this relationship was going to look like. And then suddenly it completely changed, and it feels like you didn't consent to that change, right? And like, you don't necessarily get to consent to that change, but I am understanding why you're so frustrated and confused by this behavior. And like, it sounds like you feel like you can't really talk to X about it, which makes everything even that much more complicated, because then you're like alone with no one to talk to. And I think it's actually really important for you to have some conversations with X about how this is affecting you as X's partner. And I think that you all need to have some conversation around like what the actual terms of this poly relationship are for both of you. What are you all consenting to and agreeing to in relationship with each other? Because it sounds like you all just kind of assumed that it was going to go one way, and now it's going a really different way. But we know that in lots of different relationships and lots of different iterations, right? Like there's, if we don't actually talk about what we are expecting of ourselves and each other in relationship, like that's when things get really crunchy, because it's like, oh, I really want to be part of a poly relationship where the Metamours are like good friends and are in contact with each other. And T is saying like, actually, I don't want to contact you at all. Like I will be there. It will both be at the hospital if something happens to X, but besides that, like we're not talking, right? Like, and those are both reasonable ways to approach poly relationships, right? Like, cool, great, but you all need to figure out what that's going to look like for you all, and you need to be able to talk to X about how T's behavior is impacting you, because I think it's important for them to, as the sort of focus point of these relationships, to have some understanding and to be able to advocate for both of you and what the actual terms of this relationship are going to be, right? Like, and that's hard. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, these types of conversations aren't easy. They're not easy in any relationship, and they're also definitely not easy in relationships with mental health and with jealousy and with like all of the long distance, right? Like all of these different sort of like compounding factors that make this type of communication like all the more important as well. So I want you to be able to talk to X about this, and I want you to be really curious with yourself about like what kind of poly relationship you're looking for, and whether or not the parameters that are happening in this one work for you, as somebody who is an equal player in this relationship, right? Like, I know that they were together before you came in, but you are also in relationship with X and deserve to decide what some of your expectations of that relationship look like.
Yeah, I totally agree that it's almost like you have to carve out the parameters, you know, what are the boundaries? Because it felt good in the beginning to have this open dialogue, open boundaries, right? And then something doesn't feel good to T anymore. So there has to be a discussion. I do want to point out that in the letter, you use the word confront when you say, like, am I not allowed to confront T because if I do, then I'm harming their mental health. I would just, move cautiously around this, because T, I'm a proponent of respecting the block, first and foremost.
Yep.
And I also think that because you are in relationship with X, I do think that something will fall on X as that middle person to sort of facilitate or mediate a larger conversation about what is this polycules dynamic. What are the boundaries? What are the parameters of our communication? I hesitate to say it's like X's responsibility, but I just want to put that out there that like, we're not confronting T about why they've chosen to not engage with you when they are not in active romantic relationship with you. And I know that's complicated, and I know it's a lot more nuanced than what I'm saying right there, but I just wanted to like, again, I guess, how about this? I just want to reframe the word confront to determine within your polycule, within the three of you, however is the healthiest, most, mediated way, determine what those parameters are.
Yes.
Because you all entered this with this open, field, and now there's barricades being put up, and we have to know where they're coming from and when are they going to be taken down.
Absolutely.
And Sam, while we were prepping for this episode, you had a great example about like complaining about somebody's mother.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is like when you complain to your partner about their mother, right? Where it's like you don't actually have any control over like what the mother does, and also like your partner doesn't really have any control about what the partner does or the mother does. But it is also like you have to, or you can present sort of a united understanding of like, okay, so how are we handling this situation together, right?
Yes.
As somebody who's like on the outside of this relationship, right? Like, how do you and I decide how we're going to move forward with this person who is also in relationship with you, but in a different way, right? Like, because there's not a line between you and the mother-in-law, right? It becomes more complicated, and it's this similar, I'm not going to say the same, but it's like similar in this, right? Where it's like, it's hard if you can have no contact with T, it's hard for you two to figure out the parameters of how you two are going to interact with each other, which means that X has to play a different role in this, right? Like X has to figure out what it means for them to sit in the center of this. And like, that's their responsibility as sort of the fulcrum of this poly relationship, right? Like, and that's difficult. And I think that X also needs to kind of step up in it, because like, no offense to T, but like you get to decide when your anniversary is. Like T doesn't. The whole block thing is like, yes, okay, I can understand that. But like the idea that like T has decided that your anniversary that you have decided is important to you doesn't count, or is like bad, is not T's business. Like T can go figure that out on their own. And you and X should be celebrating your damn anniversary whenever you want to celebrate it. Like See, and that's where I'm getting into the, like, this is why I really want X to step up as the person in this, to be able to understand that, like, there need to be more rules and boundaries around, like, how T is able to reflect on your relationship, absolutely. And, like, what sort of communication you and T can expect from each other if T is refusing to talk to you and is blocking you on all of the things. So
yes, totally. And the mother-in-law metaphor was originally brought up because we were saying it is absolutely okay for you to talk to X about how this is challenging for you, because
absolutely.
We have because they're your partner, because they're in it with you, and that might be emotionally nuanced for your partner. And also that's what they're signing up for.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. All right, my sweet. I hope that this helps. I know that you're in a tricky position, but I know that we can lean into that discomfort and do things differently. And we love you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for writing. We hope that this helps. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like ad-free episodes, you can always support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DM, send us your favorite relationship meme, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and music. And remember, man, it is uncomfortable to admit this, but not all people are for us, and we are not for all people. Someone else's perception of us, the story that they tell themselves about us, doesn't have to be true to us. We don't even have to defend it or acknowledge it if it's not hurting our everyday life. People will perceive us differently than we perceive ourselves, and that's okay. And if all else fails,
just break up.